Hi, my name is Emily Iannelli, and I need to talk because lots of things are going on in my life, and sometimes I feel things are getting out of hand, and I don't always know how best to deal with it. I don't have a lot of friends to talk to, and this is basically how I communicate because I'm alone a lot, isolated, depressed. I have a son who's autistic, and I'm not looking for people to feel sorry for me. I'm not looking for any sympathy or any pity or anything like that. I talk because I have to talk. And I'm not afraid to share it with people because I know I'm going through depression and I'm going through struggles. And I know I'm not the only one out there. So if I can say things that affect me, that might be things affecting other people out there, then hopefully what I say will register with them as well. And maybe they can benefit from what I'm going through and say that, oh, gee, I'm not the only one. You see, there's other people out there. And I'm not afraid to talk on YouTube. I'm not afraid to tell people what's going on with me because I am a real person. I don't fake anything. I don't hide behind things like I used to many, many years ago when I was afraid to talk about anything, when I couldn't even say a word, couldn't relate to girls, couldn't relate to guys, just felt all alone, isolated, depressed, never had a diagnosis of any sort. Uh, I was dressing in girls' clothes since I was a young age. I'm transgender. I'm hoping to have surgery, but now I'm worried now because I have liver damage. Supposedly, I should still be able to go for the surgery, but I need the surgeon now to decide. The doctor who examined my liver called and left a message that it seems that it would be okay that I do the surgery, but it's still out of my hands because now the decision has to rest with the surgeon and his team of doctors. And if this is the last, which is the last chance, because I can't deal with this anymore, and I get a call and the surgeon said we're really reluctant to do the surgery because of what's going on with your liver, then I'm just going to walk away from the surgery. I'm not going to deal with it anymore because I can't deal with the ups and downs of surgery. I just can't. I can't have my hopes up high for something that I struggled with virtually all my life, only to come crashing down on me. Look, I didn't ask to be transgender. I didn't ask to have this kind of a life, you know? I didn't ask to struggle basically every day of my life with depression, seeing that my parents had their problems and couldn't deal with it, and me being a shy person growing up, having to try my best to go on to school bravely, even though I couldn't talk to people, and just try to live my life. I tried my best, no matter what I did, whether it was school, whether it was in sports, whether it was on the job. I tried my best. I always tried my best. And I can't help how people react towards me. When I was living as a male, I did my job. I was responsible and I was very devoted and dedicated. The problem was that I basically put a lot of energies into my job because I felt threatened that I could lose my job at any time. And I had too many responsibilities. I have a house, a mortgage, I have all my expenses to pay, I have real estate taxes, I have all the expenses that come with a household, and I have unexpected expenses such as a broken heater system, plumbing, leaks all over the place, kitchen where the pipes burst. I've had a lot of things that come up, and I don't have a lot of money, so I wind up using my credit card. And I've used my credit card in the past, and I maxed out, and I had to go on a 5-year payment plan, and I finally got the the cards paid off, all of them. All of the cards were paid off. I stuck to that 5-year plan. thanks to the help of a young woman who unfortunately doesn't work with the company anymore, but she helped me get through it. She helped me get past this debt that was strangling me. And now I find myself in a similar situation now where I had to put things on my credit card, things unexpected, like plumbing related repairs and other kinds of repairs, and trying to do something for my son by getting a package of Met tickets that costed a pretty good amount of money. And the irony is that we haven't even gone to many of the games because either my son didn't want to go or other things just happened. So here I buy a plan for a Met ticket uh, games for like 15 games. Actually, it was 20, but they reduced the price because 7 of those 20 games were played. So I only got 13 tickets, but they said they reduced the price. But I don't have the money, and I thought that would be a good thing to do for my son, to get him out of the house, to go to the ballpark. And it was a nightmare because my son is autistic and he wants independence. So he decides he doesn't want to sit next to me. So he goes down and finds an empty seat and sits there. And then someone comes and says, oh, that's my seat. So then he winds up going to another seat. And then all of a sudden I lose sight of where he is. And then I start panicking. And I can't take that anymore. So basically, I had to stop taking him to ball games. And now when I take him to a movie theater, same thing. He doesn't want to sit next to me. So he wanders all throughout the theater until he finds a seat that nobody's sitting at. And then I have to go searching for him after the movie. I can't take it anymore. And tonight, he had a meltdown where he just slumped over and fell to the floor and he wouldn't get up. And people are staring, and what am I going to say? My son's autistic. He freaks out every time I say autism. I cannot deal with this anymore. It's really affecting me psychologically, and I can't deal with it. I have depression. I have bipolar disorder. I've been in the hospital numerous times because of psychiatric reasons, and now I'm hoping that I can do this transgender surgery, which I've been waiting for all my life. And I don't care what people think anymore. I'm kind of fed up with it because I've already lost many friends, so they're not friends to me. And even though they were friends in the past, they're not my friends, because friends are supposed to be loyal. Friends are supposed to stick by you. Friends are supposed to be understanding and supportive. I can go through a whole list of people I thought were my friends, and turned out that they just didn't want to associate with me when I came out. So in my book, that's not friendship. I do have friends, good friends, loyal friends, friends from my high school days. We don't see each other, obviously, but we communicate through social media, mostly Facebook. And I'm in touch with a lot of my cross-country teammates. And we had a reunion, and everybody there was very accepting of me, and they embraced me, and they were proud that I was able to live my truth, and they made me feel good, because to be honest with you, I was a little nervous how I would be seen and how I was going to be treated, but they treated me nice and with respect and dignity, and I have lots of great friends and teammates that I associate with, and it brought me back to my days running as a high school cross-country runner. Even though I wasn't on the varsity team, I was on a JV team. But my coach treated me the same as all his runners, even the best, because he knew I tried my best. And I did that all my life. And where did it get me? I worked 30 years in the accounting profession, and it got me nowhere. I had financial problems once I lost my last job because of my transgender situation, because the owner was homophobic, transphobic, you name it. So he wanted the manager to find an excuse to fire me. And you know what that excuse was? That I didn't complete a survey that was still due a month later. And I was learning other things within the accounting department. So she said, I gave this to you 2 weeks ago, and I thought you would have it done by now. So she says to me, I want you to go home and think about what you should have done. And then I went back the next day, and I wanted to express myself and tell her, this survey isn't due until next month. What is the problem if I do it yesterday or if I do it today? It's gonna be out in time. And I got fed up. The next day I went home. That day I went home. I was so mad. And I don't get mad like this. But I was so mad at the way I was treated, with such disrespect and with not even a way to tell them why it wasn't done. They wouldn't even listen to me. All she said to me was, you go home and you think about it. Then the next day I go in and she says, it's not working out. We're going to give you till 2 weeks so you can try to find a new job, and we'll pay you to the end of the month. I went home. I was very upset. I was worried about my financial future. So my son has a meltdown. He can't sleep. He's having a difficult time. So I'm trying my best to control him and help him, while in my mind I'm worried that I'm going to lose my house. I'm worried that I'm going to go into foreclosure. I'm worried about where money is going to come. And I was going through my own struggles with my gender identity. I can't help the way I was born. I cannot help that I suffer from depression. I cannot help that I'm transgender. I cannot help that my son's autistic. These are things that I'm dealing with. So that night I couldn't sleep. I was exhausted, but I went to work as I always did, even though they said they don't want me there anymore. So for that 2 weeks, I wanted to do the best I could anyway, because I'm a good person, I'm reliable, I'm dedicated, and I'm not the one to just abandon. They gave me 2 more weeks, so I was going to work those 2 weeks. And because I had such a difficult night, and I wanted to explain myself to the manager, and as I went to explain, I just fainted. I fell to the ground, and I couldn't get up. So they reacted with horror. They were so scared. So they got me over to a couch, and then they called the ambulance, the paramedics, who took me to the hospital, Bellevue. And I was admitted to Bellevue, and I was treated first for the fall to see if anything happened x-ray-wise. So when everything proved negative, then they brought me to the psych area. That was my very first experience being in a psychiatric ward in a hospital. And it turned out to be okay. It was a positive experience because I learned that I do have problems. I learned that I do struggle with depression. I learned a lot. And they know that I'm transgender. And I didn't need them to diagnose me as transgender because I knew it all along. But what they did diagnose me with was bipolar disorder and severe depression. And I had to go through my whole family history with the doctors. I had to tell them everything. So I had to tell them about my mom's illness, that she suffered from paranoia and schizophrenia, and that she was in and out of hospitals many, many times. And it affected me, and it affected my 2 sisters. But I was very sensitive. I was a boy. I was very lost. I didn't know whether I was a boy or a girl. And I was heartbroken because my mom always helped me with my homework. She was very nice to me. She cared about me. And I related well to her. My dad I related well to, but he was too busy working. And he didn't have time. You know, the only time we ever had was going to baseball games, when he would drive me to my Little League games. Literally, that was basically the only time I had with my dad, and less, including the occasional times when we would go to movies. And I remember the very first movie I saw with my dad, which wasn't my very first movie ever. The very first movie ever was when I was in kindergarten or first grade, when we saw the movie Bedknobs and Broomsticks. That movie was my very first movie that I saw with Angela Lansbury, Bedknobs and Broomsticks. But the first movie I ever saw with my dad was Tora Tora, which was a World War II movie, and it had to deal with Pearl Harbor and the Japanese attacks, because my dad was very much into the history of war, and he read lots of things. He read about John F. Kennedy and his uh, being a Navy hero, and he read about lots of military stories that dealt with like the Battle of Normandy and other movies that were big popular movies that I just can't think of titles. They were Expendable. That was another movie he liked. So we would bond occasionally. But due to the nature of his work, we really didn't have a traditional father-son relationship. And I suffered because I was confused about my own gender. Not my sexuality, my gender. Because I always liked girls. I was always attracted to girls. So my sexuality was attracting to women, young girls, whatever. When I was a young boy, I was always attracted to the girls. I'm still attracted to women. But I never had a normal relationship with a woman, ever. I'm married, we have a son, but we only had the, whatever you want to call it, you know what I'm talking about, only a few times. And luckily we had Matthew. My life is not normal. I know that. And I'm trying to deal with my son's autism. And he's our only child. And it's breaking my heart because I don't know how to help him. I'm trying to get him out. I'm trying to do things with him. He's got behavioral problems. He goes out, he talks to kids or people, and he even approaches young kids. He's 20 years old, but he's got the mentality of a 12-year-old. And it's so hard when I take him out, and I'm trying to do the best I can with him. And then he says that I'm not a good father. And he says he wished he was never born. Do you know how painful that is? And I'm trying my best to help him, And now I feel guilty that I'm focusing on myself, that I'm trying to be a good person, but I also need to do things in my life to help me cope. I've been living this transgender struggle all my life. I was trying my best to hide it. I was trying my best not to tell anybody. I cannot help the person that I am. And when I did come out, I was so naive that I thought people would embrace me and accept me and make me feel like I was welcome. But the total opposite. I got fired from another job. The accounting firm convinced the owner that I shouldn't be there because I'm a disruption, and it's not normal behavior. So the CPA firm where I used to work for almost 10 years, they were the company I was working with, which I did get through the CPA firm. The company where I was currently working, I had meetings with them. I told them I came out. I wanted to be able to still work there. Originally, they said no. And then they came back and said, okay, we'll accept that. You just do it gradually, okay? So they accepted it. They were going to work with me. They were going to work, and then they wanted me to promise them that it would be a gradual transition over time. So I was happy because I thought that was good and I thought it was going to work out. But then the CPA firm where I worked, the partner who I used to work with, he really turned on me and he convinced management that I should not work there, that I would be a disturbance to the company, that I wouldn't serve the company's needs well because they are transphobic. Not the company, because they were willing to work with me, but the CPA firm where I put my heart and soul into for 10 years, and then he turns on me and makes an ultimatum to the company that they don't want me there. So then they make a promise to me that they have a job where they're fine with my transition, that they will work with me. And then I go there believing that. And now I lost the opportunity to work there because of what he told their management. So I go innocently, dressed. I didn't have long hair like this. I had to wear a wig. And it was my very first opportunity dressing up. And I did it. I wasn't afraid. I actually did it. Despite being a very shy person, I was able to go to work dressed like this, acting very professional. I didn't wear a hair bow for you who think this is too immature. I went with the wig and I dressed the way a woman normally dresses, and I went and did my job. I learned the ropes. I was thrown into a position where they never had a controller. They wanted to figure out the best way to get their books in order, and they had many locations. So I'm learning the process, right? And usually when you're learning, they give you like 6 months, and then you work on, and I did what I was supposed to. I was very attentive. And then this issue with this damn report survey that I was given roughly 2 weeks prior, and it had another month before it was due. So I just put it on the back burner. I wasn't going to forget about it. I was going to do it, and I was certainly going to do it within a reasonable time frame. Most likely I would have done it like the next few days. But then this manager has a frenzy, and she gets all bent out of shape, and she says, "You didn't do this. I gave this to you 2 weeks ago and you didn't finish it." And I said, "Wait a second, that report isn't due for another month." And she refused to listen to me, and she demands that I leave the office and go home. And I was so angry, and I'm not an angry person, but I'm telling you, the way she treated me, I wanted to do something that I never do. And I can't do it because I'm not that kind of a person. But she got me so riled up that I was extremely angry. And I wasn't treated fairly. I wasn't treated with respect or dignity the way she treated me, and said, "Go home and think about what you did or didn't do." So I was so upset. And the office where I was working was like 3 or 4 miles away from Penn. And I didn't even want to deal with the subway. I just walked home straight to Penn Station and took the train home. I walked the 4 miles because I needed a form of therapy to help me cope with the way I was treated. And I was very upset. And then I go in the next day, and she has the nerve to tell me it's not working out, and we're going to give you 2 weeks. She had the nerve to tell me that because of this minor incident. And then, like I said before, I had a difficult night because of my son's situation with his autism, which is a horror show to begin with. And I've read books where they say that people can beat autism. Well, it doesn't seem that way for us, because my son has struggled with it all his life, and at the age of 20 he's still struggling with it, and he doesn't want to go into a group home. And I'm trying my best to find out what I can do to help him. I take him out to movies, I go out to dinner with him, I take him places, but it doesn't seem to help. It's only a temporary fix. And I know that's not going to help him. He needs friends. He needs people to socialize with. He needs to be involved. He's not mature enough to go to college. I was very disappointed and disheartened that he can't go to college. You're a parent. You know, you have kids. Your kids are probably in college, or they graduated college, and some of your kids even went to medical school or law school or any other school that's for professionals, or maybe a trade school where they become a carpenter, but they had direction. They knew what they wanted to do. And they were like 19 years old, 18, 19, or 20. And they were able to make those choices. My son is 20. He's very bright, but he has no clue about life. And it's not my fault. I try my best to teach him about life. I try my best to teach him how to go out and live and be the best he can. But he's got autism, and autism is not something that you can just overcome, just like depression, just like being transgender. These are not things that you can just overcome. I lived my whole life in denial. I could not go out in public and present myself as a female because I was scared to death. I was young. I had nobody to tell me how I should live my life. I didn't have even a therapist to talk to. And I didn't even see a therapist until like 35 years old. A few years, no, 29, 31, 2, 3, no, 33. 33 years old, I finally started going to a therapist. That was 4 years after my mom died. I should have went sooner, but I didn't because I didn't know how to present myself. I didn't even know how to express what was going on with me. I didn't know how to communicate to people. That was my whole problem in life. I didn't know how to communicate. I couldn't tell people what really was going on with me. So I had to put on a facade. I had to pretend to be someone that I wasn't. The thing that saved me was playing Little League Baseball, where I was encouraged by a neighbor's brother when my father and I used to have catch on the street in our neighborhood. And we would throw the ball back to each other. There was no communication, but we would throw the ball back to each other. And that was one of the ways we bonded. Even though we didn't talk, we just threw the ball together, for maybe like 20 minutes or so. And Dennis, my neighbor's brother, came up to me and my dad and said, your son has potential, and I think it would be in his best interest to play in Little League, he says to my dad. So my dad agrees, and he gave him all of the information that he needs, and he said that this will be a good thing for your son. And he went to the hall where you sign up, and, I had to fill out an application with the help of my dad, and, put my age, my name, my address, my experience in playing baseball, all that stuff. And then I was given a uniform. I played the first 2 years, I played for the Indians. And in the second year, which was, I was 61, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 66, 68, 69, 70. Yeah, I joined in 69, playing with the Indians. The year the Mets won the World Series, the year Neil Armstrong put the flag on the moon and said, this is one step for man and one giant leap for mankind. If I got that right, I believe something to that effect. So 69 was a very memorable year, and it's why I never forget when I started Little League Baseball. Plus the Mets won the World Series, and we watched that on TV, my mom and I, and we were so excited. I became a Met fan through my mom, because she was a Brooklyn Dodger fan. And when the Brooklyn Dodgers moved out to California, it broke her heart, so she stopped watching baseball because she hated the Yankees. So when the Mets started playing baseball in roughly 60 or 61, basically when I was born, she devoted her time as an enthusiast of baseball to the Mets. She adopted the Mets, basically. She went from the Brooklyn Dodgers to the New York Mets. So in '69, I started playing Little League, and my dad would drive me to the games and practices. And I had a great coach, uh, John Muscarella, I believe his name was. Nice guy. And he taught me baseball fundamentals. He had assistant coach, and we would play, we would practice. They would hit balls. They had to decide where I would play position-wise. So they saw that I was very adept at the infield. So they said, you'd like to play shortstop maybe, or second base? And I said to them, I think I can play either one, to be honest, and even maybe both, if you needed me to change positions. And I felt comfortable at shortstop and second base. That was like my territory. So after they batted the balls and they saw that I could catch ground balls, they were pretty happy. Then they started hitting fly balls to me, and they saw that I could judge the ball as it's coming down and that I could make the catch. And they even saw me make a few leap catches where I actually had to physically jump to catch the baseball. So they said, you got talent, kid. So you're going to play second base, and if you like, you can also play shortstop, depending on our needs. So that very first year, I was very shy with my teammates. I mean, I didn't talk to them really. I did in some respects, but not like social conversation. Just like he just made a good hit, or he stole second base. But I never could engage in like just normal conversation. Everything was just focused on the game and what was taking place. And I was practicing hitting also. They would teach us how to hit the baseball and to learn how to field, which I learned. And I was a contact hitter. For you who don't know what that means, it means that I basically had a good eye to get my bat on the ball, and I would hit it in the infield, and sometimes it would go out to the center fielder or the left fielder or the right, or wherever I hit the ball, and I would get a hit basically. I hit it through the infield, and I was pretty adept at that. So I was a contact hitter. I wasn't a home run hitter, but I could see the ball, and I could make a connection with the ball. I could see it, and I could hit it. So they said I've got good talent, good skill. So I became a regular on the team, and they saw how I played. And then when 1970 came, they had me play on the same team, same position, and I could hit the ball just like I did the previous year. I was a contact hitter. The only thing I wasn't good at was stealing bases, because I didn't know how to do the signs or interpret them to go, and I couldn't judge when the pitcher would release the ball to the catcher, when exactly to start running to second base. So the few times that I attempted to steal second base, I was thrown out by the catcher. So that was a weakness of mine. And I was very gun shy after that. So I basically just got on base, but I was not a setter for another batter where I would get to second base. The only time that I could get to second base where I could beat out the throw from the pitcher was if the batter behind me bunted the ball. If he bunted the ball, it would go slowly on the field, and whoever caught it would usually throw to first base, so I got to second. And if they did throw to second, I was usually right there on the base before they caught the ball. So that was the extent of my running abilities. And whenever someone hit like a base hit and I was on second, there were a couple of times where I rounded third and even got home and I was safe. So I was good at judging the ball where it was hit and judging or trying to judge how that outfielder would throw the ball back to the infield or to the catcher directly. So I was good at that. And in 1970, our team was like the best. We won most of our games. We were like 16-2. There was like every week we would go out and celebrate and have pizza, because every time we won a game, the coach would treat us to pizza. So it was cool, you know. You're winning all these games. You're going out eating pizza with your teammates, and you're celebrating your victory. It was a great year, you know. It was fun. I was having a ball. And then we actually won the championship. We were 16-2, and then we won additional games for the championship. So when the season officially ended and we played the playoffs, we had a dinner where we would celebrate the team that won the championship. It was at the Carlisle in Brooklyn. I don't even think it exists anymore. But it was a nice place, you know. I think it was like also where people have weddings or family functions. And we got to see at different tables, daises or whatever you want to call it. And my parents came, you know, and my sisters were home, taken care of by a babysitter. My sister, my middle sister, 60, yeah, she was 7, you know, she didn't want to go. And my other sister was like just like a 67, so 7 and 3. So my 2 sisters were watched by a babysitter while my parents came and, you know, celebrated with me winning a team trophy. But the day before, the coach said, "I got a surprise for you." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You'll find out." So I went to the function with my mom and dad. I had no idea what he was talking about. So they first celebrated the team, and they all got up, including me, to go and accept our trophies. And they would shake our hands and said, "Good job, young men." And then they started handing out individual achievement trophies. And my mom and dad were so proud of me that I won a first place trophy, you know. And, you know, I was showing them and I was so proud. And then they started announcing other players for their individual achievements. So we had like most winningest pitcher in the season. We had the most, a pitcher with the most strikeouts. Then they had like, they celebrated like someone who was a very good home run hitter. They celebrated players for their natural ability, like most valuable player. And then they made all those announcements, right? And then there was one trophy left. And I'm still wondering, what does coach mean by what he said? So they said, for most improved player, Edward D. Ionelli, the third. And I was like in shock, you know? I never won anything in my life, you know, aside from the first place trophy. And I was like stunned, basically. And I went up. My parents hugged me, and then I went up. And the coach said, "Great job," you know? He said, "Great job, you did good, kid." So I received the trophy for most improved player. And he shook my hand, and he said, "I'm proud of you, kid." And I went back to my seat, and I was so happy that I got recognized. And that coach was happy, you know, and he was right. I was very surprised. that I won. And in fact, I still have those trophies. They're my keepsakes. My 1970 trophy, most improved player, and the team championship trophy had the year 70. So when I look at it, I'm thinking back to that time when I was 9 years old. And we're talking, I'm going to be 59 next year. So we're talking about, I'm 70, so 80, 90, 2000, 2010, 2019, almost 50 years. You're talking about 49 years ago. I still have those two trophies. They're 49 years old, those trophies. And I look at them and I still remember my youth and when I played Little League Baseball. It triggers something wonderful in my mind. It triggers the best part of my life when I was a shy young boy who tried his best to be a member of a team and be a part of the team and have respect and have people cheer for you. And I wish that I could go back in time and relive that experience, because as an adult, you find out that life is hard, life is a struggle, and you have lots of responsibilities. And sometimes those responsibilities can really affect your mindset. It affected my mother's mindset. It affected my dad's mindset. It affected our relationships because we were so dependent on working that we didn't have time for our children. And that's basically what happened with my dad. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom into our youth, throughout our youth. So she took care of us basically back then. Those days it was different. So a lot of the mothers would be stay-home moms. And my dad was the breadwinner. He was the one that went out and made the living so we could have a good house, so we could go to parochial school. So we had a nice neighborhood to grow up in. And he did his best, you know. He worked hard. My mom did her best in raising us. But my mom got sick because she worried a lot about my dad, because my dad worked in a dangerous business. He was an iron worker, and he experienced a lot of difficult things that would make you kind of get messed up here. He was working on the Verrazano Bridge, and he lost his buddy. They were just talking like minutes before, and they went out and did their respective jobs. And then my father hears this man in distress, and he looks to see what was going on, and then he saw his friend, the one he was just talking with, holding on like, you know, for dear life. And my dad knew that he had to react and get to him and try to pull him up. And my dad had a problem with his hand because he had lost a couple of fingers and part of his thumb. So he's trying his best to lift up his friend from the bridge where he would have fell over. So as he's pulling him, my dad is a lot less in weight to his friend. And my dad is now ready to go over himself. So it would have been both men going over. And then this other iron worker runs over to my dad and pulls him back. But my dad couldn't hold on to his friend, and he saw him fall to his death while they were working on the Verrazano Bridge. So obviously they closed the bridge. The ironworkers, including my dad, went home. They had to do a big investigation, and that's when my dad started to drink. And the combination of the dangers of the job, the combination of my dad now drinking, was very hard for my mom to deal with. Plus, my mom had mental illness. So she worried constantly. And I think that passed down to me because I'm a chronic worrier. I worry about everything. I don't have control over things, but I still worry about it. And it helped. It. My mom always knew that when my dad went to work, that he always put his best into his job. And I knew that. And then when my sisters got old enough, they knew that as well. But my dad had some incidents where he got hurt. There was a crane incident where he was working on the side of a building, and the crane operator didn't realize how close he was to my dad. And all of a sudden, my dad feels he literally feels like he's gonna die. His bones, he's right up against the wall, and the crane operator doesn't realize it. And then he related this story to me, and I'll never forget it. I can't do it justice the way he explained it to me, but what he told me was, when I was older, that he was working on a job, and he felt like he was going to die because he was feeling like his bones were, collapsing. And as he's preparing to die, basically, he has an image of the family, but then he says he felt something. He said he felt a gentle hand, like pushing him and saying, "It's not your time yet." Literally, felt a gentle hand with these words, like a heavenly kind of, "It's not your time yet." And then my dad wakes up in the hospital in extreme pain, and he survived because God said, "You're not ready. You still have work to do," essentially. And he was laid up in the hospital for like almost a month, you know. And then there were other incidents where he got banged up and injured, and my mom worried every day when he went to work if he was going to come home, because she heard things that really scared her. And I was just a young boy, and I got worried too. Every time my dad would go to work, I would pray in the morning that he'd return home safely. That got into my head because my mom worried so much. So I would pray, "Dear God, please protect my dad. Please don't let him get hurt. My mom needs to be strong." And I prayed for my mom too, because I could see she was like very nervous. Every day he would go to work, and he'd get up like at 4 in the morning, and he would get home like at 4:30 in the afternoon. He'd eat his dinner, he'd take a shower, and then he'd go to sleep. Every day it was like that. And then some days when it was raining, they couldn't do the job, so he would go home, and he would, do his models. He was into models, watch some TV. We were in school, so by the time we got home from school, my dad was ready to go to bed because he knew he had to go to work the next day. So it was the same routine for years. He'd be up by 4 o'clock, out of the house by 4:30. He'd either drive to the job or he'd take a train, depending on where he worked. And we would pray, basically, that God would protect him and keep him safe, and that he would come home. So that was in my mind too, growing up. And my mom got sick. She got very sick over it, because she was afraid. Because she felt if my dad died, how would she be able to take care of me and my 2 sisters, She wasn't working, so she was scared. And I guess that was like getting to her, And I think she had some form of illness when she was a young woman in school, before she married. She must have had something. And she had a lot of problems mentally. She wound up in hospitals on a regular basis. She had paranoia, she had schizophrenia, she had manic depression, which is another name for bipolar disorder. So she went to psychiatric hospitals, South Oaks, in fact, where she was admitted many, many times. And they would, her psychiatrist would prescribe her with lots of medications. And over time, you could see that those medications sedated her so much that she became like a zombie. She wasn't that strong woman that she used to be. She used to be feisty. She used to be someone who could stand up for herself and to have conviction and to know how to handle situations. The only situation that she had trouble handling was my dad going to work every day. She worried too much about him coming home safely. And that's what triggered her mental illness. She must have had it, but it was dormant. But then when she started worrying about my dad because of all these tragedies, and then my dad also lost his brother. He was working and he fell off a job site. He lived, he survived the fall. He won a court settlement because of what happened, and the lawyer representing him sued the construction company. So I don't know what the settlement was, but he was able to get a mansion out in Oakdale with all of the handicap things you need, like the ramp to his room. He had round-the-clock nursing that would have change in shifts. And basically he was confined to a wheelchair. He was a paraplegic. And my dad just couldn't handle that. As much as he tried to be strong when we went to visit, deep down he was really upset. And it wore on him emotionally. And before he got hurt, my uncle Donald, which is my middle name, Edward Donald Iannelli III, my grandfather, my father's father, was working on another construction job, and he fell. And he too became paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair. And my grandfather lived another 2 years after that. So if he didn't fall, he would have had a longer life. But because of him being confined to a wheelchair and paralyzed, and I remember this as if it was yesterday, he just died. And then my grandmother, my father's mother, only lived like another 6 months after her husband died. So it was 2 tragedies within a 6-month period. And then going ahead again, my mom was hospitalized many times. My uncle's in a wheelchair. We go to visit. And a beautiful house they had. They wouldn't have had that house if it wasn't for the settlement. But obviously they'd rather have him normal than the mansion and the money. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So he got injured and basically he was a paraplegic. And he used to play soccer. He was very good at soccer. And his wife had just given birth to twins, a boy and a girl, and he couldn't give the time to them because he was crippled. So he aged quickly after that. And my mom, I'll never forget, it was Thanksgiving Day, 1989. We were getting ready to celebrate. And then my mom freaked out. She just lost it emotionally. She started going after I don't know, this is kind of hard to say. So I'm just going to sugarcoat this. I don't usually sugarcoat things, but I'll say it like this. My mother got into an argument with my dad. More severe than that, but I'm not going to say. So she got into an argument. And then we were trying to calm her down. We were trying to get her stable. We left a message with the psychiatrist, but obviously it was Thanksgiving, so we couldn't reach him. So we had to make sure the oven was off. The turkey was in there, the oven was off. And then we had to get my mom to the hospital. So we called the police, the ambulance, and they took her to the local hospital. We were in Belmore, so my memory's a little fuzzy, but I believe they took her at the time to Meadowbrook Hospital, now known as NUMC, Nassau University Medical Center, which I believe is now affiliated with another hospital. I don't know, I think it may even be Northwell. But back then it was Meadowbrook Hospital. And they then transferred her over to South Oaks. And she went back and forth between South Oaks and Brunswick because she refused to eat. And she was getting weaker and weaker. So they were dealing with her mental, they were doing shock treatment, electric shock treatment, and they were trying to get her to eat, and she refused, so they had to hook her up on IV. But they were a psych hospital, so they really couldn't do that on a daily basis. They didn't have the support, so they would transfer her to Brunswick. And at Brunswick, they would have all the medical instrumentation to deal with her case. And they had her hooked up to IV because she refused to eat. The doctors were trying their best, and basically she gave up. She couldn't live anymore. She just decided this is it. And she died on March 21st, 1990. I think it was just around the same time as Billy Martin dying in a car accident. It was like roughly around that time. So she died March 21st, 4 days after St. Patrick's Day, because my mom was Irish. So she died on the 21st, 1990. And I was 29 years old. My middle sister was 27. And my younger sister, she was 22. So I was 29. My middle sister was 27, and my younger sister was 22. And we knew she was sick when we were teenagers. In fact, that's how my sisters grew up faster. But me, I was always I was the one who was very slow in developing. I wasn't focused on making my own meals. I depended on my dad too much. And my sisters just did their own thing. They'd go out with their friends. My sisters are very accomplished today, but back then, they would drink, they would smoke cigarettes, and I never did that. But they went through a phase, But my sisters stopped smoking after a while, and then they were very responsible with drinking. So they don't drink a lot, but they socially drink. It's not like they are alcoholics like my poor dad was because of all the things he saw. and all the pain that he experienced emotionally through family tragedies, and seeing my mom very sick. And I never smoked, I never drank. I'm not bragging or anything, but that's the way I was. I was like straight as an arrow. The only thing that was different between me and my sisters was that I was cross-dressing on a regular basis to deal with the stress of life and identifying differently from how I was born. I was born male, but I always thought that I should have been a girl. I really did. And I'm saying this sincerely. You know, I felt different, but I couldn't express it. I didn't know how, whether I was 6 years old or 29 years old. I couldn't express what I was feeling or going through. And when I did get stressed, when my mom was in the hospital, she was at South Oaks, and it was very close to the Sunrise Mall, which is now named after another mall. I don't remember the name, but it's like a chain. So after I would visit her at South Oaks, then I would go to Sunrise Mall, and I would go into the dress department, and I would buy a dress, you know. And I was in my late 20s. So I would devise a way to go into the dressing room. I could buy dresses, I had no problem, or even intimate apparel. I had no problem despite my shyness, because I had this inner drive to feel natural and to get the clothes that I felt were appropriate for myself. So despite the fact that I couldn't talk to people, I couldn't express my emotions, I never had trouble going into the women's department, even in the lingerie department. Never had a problem. And if a woman would approach me and said, "May I help you, sir?" I said, "No, I'm just looking for something for my girlfriend." You know, I wasn't going to say I'm looking for something for me. That was where I kind of was shy. I didn't have the courage to say, no, I'm buying for myself. I couldn't, I wasn't ready to do that. So when I got stressed out, I would wind up going to the women's department at Macy's or Sears or J.C. Penney's. And I would, or Stearns, when Stearns was around, which then became, well, I don't know, A&S, Stearns, then became Sears. A lot of changes, that's what I remember. But I never had a problem going into the women's department. Lingerie, dresses, you name it, I could buy, you know. I wouldn't talk to the cashier or anything unless they said, "Oh, this is so pretty." And they made an assumption that, "Oh, this must be for your girlfriend, right?" And I just played along and said, "Yeah, you think she'll like it?" And she would say, "Yeah." So, you know, I had a way to deal with that. And before I bought, though, I had to make sure it would fit, especially a dress. So what I would do is I would go into the men's department and I'd grab a couple of shirts, and then I would kind of overdrape it over the dress. So I would essentially conceal it. And back then, they didn't ask how many garments you had. You know, they just say, "Go ahead, this door's open." So I would go in. I'd put the men's shirts on the rack because I know I'm not going to buy them. And then I would try on the dress, and I'd look at it and see if it fit me and how I looked in it. And if I liked it, then I would go and buy it. So then I would take the men's shirts and I'd conceal the dress. And I would go and put the shirts back in the proper department, the men's department. And then I would go to the cashier with the dress in hand. Sometimes I waited on the line. never talked to anybody on the line, basically. And then when it was my time to go to the cashier to pay, I'd give her the dress. Some women would talk and some just did the job. They didn't say a word. And I preferred it that way. And then I would have the dress, and I had it in a bag, and I had a rush, you know? It's like when someone smokes pot or something. I never tried it, but I think they have a rush. And I had a rush with dresses. So I was like all excited. But this is how I dealt with my mother's illness. And then I started to get too crazy buying dresses. It was like OCD. It was like obsessive compulsive behavior. Because every time I got stressed out, I would wind up going and buying a dress. And it wasn't just I was buying, I would actually wear the dress. I was cross-dressing, basically. But I couldn't do it in public, so I would wear men's clothes to conceal the dress. And that's basically how I could tap into my feminine side, or the way I identified as a female. But it was hard because I wanted to express myself. So I had to put on the charade that I was man, that I was masculine, that I was, that everything was fine. But on the inside it wasn't. I was going through so much turmoil, and I didn't know how to deal with it because I kept it all bottled up inside of me. I couldn't explain it to anybody. I suffered terribly emotionally, and I was very distant with my sisters. I had no way to connect with them. They were all doing their own things. My two sisters were very close, but I was the loner, basically. I had to do everything by myself, and I was very shy. I didn't have a normal life. I never had a girlfriend. When my mom passed away, I was 29, and I remember I used to bother my mom all the time, asking her if she thinks I'll ever meet a girl. I mean, it was like on a regular basis. Mom, do you think I'm going to meet a girl? Mom, why can't I talk to girls? Mom, how do I try to approach a girl? Mom, what is the best way to talk to a girl if you like her? And my mom would always say, look, you're no different from the girl, other than you're the boy and she's the girl. She does everything like you do, you know? They're no different, you know? And, with that advice, I still couldn't talk to the girls, even though she said, look, they're just like you, other than the fact that they're girls and you're a boy, And I knew girls mature faster than boys do anyway, So when I was a teenager, like 18, I was ignorant, I didn't even want to have sex. I didn't even think about it. But I did what boys do, basically, I don't have to tell you. You know what I'm talking about. But I couldn't talk to girls. I really couldn't talk to anybody, guy or girl. It was just the way I was, because I felt so insecure. I was so depressed. I didn't have a normal life, basically. I was like isolated. I had maybe a few friends, but basically I was a loner, and all I did was I pushed myself to do the best I could, whether it was running or working or whatever, playing baseball. And I forgot to mention something very important. When I was in high school, I was having lots of difficulties, not academically, socially. I couldn't relate to girls. I couldn't relate to boys. I couldn't relate to anybody. And I was very depressed. I was struggling. I never went to a psychiatrist. I never went to a therapist. I was 17, 16, 17, 18. I didn't know how to relate to people. I didn't know how to strike up a conversation. I never felt comfortable around people. So basically, I would isolate myself. Even in the school cafeteria, I would look for the table where nobody was around, and I would eat my lunch there, basically by myself. I was really that bad talking with people. I was ultra shy, extremely shy, painfully shy. I couldn't talk to anybody. And one day, when I'm on the lunch line, a teacher approached me. I knew he was a math teacher, but I never had him. I wish I did after what he did for me. But I had a good math teacher. I remember his name, Mr. Whittamack. I liked him. He was good. He looked like a real professor. He was very intelligent, and I liked him. And he explained things like so clearly that I knew how to learn in his class. He was an excellent teacher. But the teacher that approached me, affectionately now I refer to him as Coach, but his name was Alan J. Bukowski, and he taught trigonometry. And he approached me and he looks at me and says, how would you like to run for my team? And I looked at him and I said, but I don't have any experience other than the few times in gym when we would run around track. And he said, well, you'll learn from me and your teammates, and I think you'll have a good time. So I was very taken by the fact that he approached me like that, and I was thinking, wow, why me? Why does he approach me? And before I went to eat my lunch, he said, meet me at my office in the gym after your last class. So I did. I met him in his office in the physical education department, phys ed. And I went up and I sat. It was like there was a desk. I was sat and he was at his desk. And he said, so this is what you're gonna meet teammates of yours when we do the team meeting. You look like you can run like long distance. So he said, I'll probably have you run on the JV team as a miler, a 2-miler, and a cross-country runner. Different seasons. So in the spring, you will run on the track the mile and the 2-mile. And during the fall, you'll run cross-country. So I said, how am I going to get the opportunity to learn how to run these kind of races? And he said, well, we have practice, We run around Mill Pond. Sometimes we run down Montauk Parkway. And other times we run just around the track. So I said, okay, I'll give it my best shot. And he said, that's what I wanted to hear. And then he said, we're going to have a meeting. And we're going to talk and introduce all of the members, the teammates. And then he introduced himself he introduced us to all the teammates, this is Teddy Conover, Timmy Conover, Scott Carlin, Ira Myers, Kenny Eisenband, uh, Paul Welsher, uh, uh, Rich Cogan, Barbara Davis. She was the only girl on the team. And there were others. I'm sorry if I forgot your names. I don't mean to. There were others, and we got to, introduce ourselves. And I said my name is Eddie, Edward Ionelli, but I go by Eddie. And before I knew it, we started running races or practices. First we ran practices, and the teammates would approach me and, say, congratulations, you got a good coach, and we're going to teach you things. So I was all excited because I felt connected to something. I never had that feeling other than when I was in Little League baseball in Brooklyn. So now I felt like I belonged to something, and I didn't feel all alone like I used to. And I actually had a great time during practices and even during races. I remember we would run around Mill Pond like half a dozen times, and you're talking about over a mile, maybe longer. And we would run around the pond and through like a little forest or whatever you want to call it. And it was kind of fun. It was just though tiring because you'd run around and you'd stop, you'd do some stretching, and then you'd run around again, and the same routine, and you run around, run around, run around, run around. Before you know it, you've done it 6 times. And then coach would time us on occasion, and then we would go back to the high school, and we would run back to the high school. Then we would run on the Wantor Parkway. We'd go like to the second bridge. Then we would come back to the high school. And other times we went around the track. And then when we had the races, we'd have them all over. We had races in Sunken Meadow State Park. We had races up by Marist College. We raced on the New York Tech campus. We raced at Eisenhower Park. We raced at Marist College, I think I mentioned. We raced in the Bronx at the Armory. We raced basically everywhere. We never raced outside of the state. I think only the best runners did that, but I was on the JV team. But being that I was on the JV team didn't make a difference to coach. He treated us all the same. Whether it was me as, I guess, the last one on the totem pole, which was the JV team, and I, was just learning basically, to the top of the elite, like Ira Myers, and Timmy Canova, Paul Welsher, Teddy Canova, they were, and Kenny Eisman, they were like the top of the team. Oh yeah, and then we had Andy Bank also ran with us, and his brother, and Jay Gottesman. So we had a lot of good runners and good people. And I think Roger Luchan was on the spring track, and Aaron Toski. But I think Aaron was also on the cross-country team. And we had a guy named Tex, who seemed a little bit off, but like I said, coach, once he felt you would be a good contributor to the team, he would just recruit you. So that's what happened with Tex also. And Tex was kind of similar to me, very quiet, didn't really talk much, and Paul Welsher was that way too. But there was something special about Tex. I didn't really kind of get to really know him, but I believe that he had some kind of learning disability. So we tried to help him, and encourage him because he was a great kid. And I got to meet all these nice guys, runners, and also Barbara, a young woman on the team. And we were like a family. We had great times. And we would run, and we would have great experiences running on all these different courses. And we would wait for our time to run. So they usually had the varsity teams run first, and they had our best runners would be very competitive, and they would place high in the races. And then they would have the JV team, where I was always during my high school career. I never advanced to varsity. I was always JV. But like I said, it didn't matter to coach. All coach wanted was for you to do your best, He said, I don't care if you finished in last place. If you tried your hardest and you tried your best and you completed the race, that's all I care about. So he really taught us that we were a team, and it didn't matter the best of the team or the worst or slowest of the team. We were all a team, and we rooted for each other, and we pulled for each other, because that's what a team is all about. And he motivated me, coach, I was never finishing last in any races. I was just using that as like when coach said, I don't care if you finish last, or if you finish first or last, it doesn't matter to me, as long as you tried your best. So I always did. I put everything into my races. I always tried my best, and I did respectable, actually. In cross-country races, which is 3.1 miles, I ran basically in my best time ever. I would basically run the 3 miles, each mile, roughly, I bet my best time per mile for a 3.1 mile race was between 5 minutes and 50 seconds to 6 minutes, depending on the terrain. And it would be slower if we had like all these challenges, like uphills and then downhills. And Sunken Meadow was like one of those kind of courses. The way they designed it, it was very difficult. But in my best races, I ran like, in my best race, I believe, I ran like a 17-minute race, and I didn't ever have a race where I was slower than 18 to 18 and a half minute races. So basically I was around the 6-minute mile mark, and then like the best runners would be under 5-minute mark, like Ira Myers. But coach was proud of all of us, and he knew that I was trying my best, and he was very happy actually with my times. In fact, I was one of the runners that helped us win first place, because when they judge the winner, they look at where the runners respectively wound up in the end of the race. Like, for instance, if you had a runner who finished third, and then you had a runner on the team that finished sixth, and then another as like eighth and all, and I would probably position at like 12 or whatever out of a field of maybe 60 runners each race. So then they add up all the positions, and if your score is lesser than the other teams, then your team would win the race. And we had those types of wins, varsity and JV. And I felt like happy because I helped contribute to our team winning first place. And then they'd give you medals, like I finished in third place or something. And it was a fantastic experience. And Coach was the best to me and to all of our teammates. And my teammates were fantastic. They were wonderful. In fact, we just had a reunion in August, towards the end of August, where we had a nice reunion. It was at Sunken Meadow Park, and we had a picnic, and I got to see a lot, not all of them, but I got to see a lot of my teammates, and I saw Barbara, the only girl on the team. I saw Teddy Canover, I saw Timmy Canover, I saw Rich Cogan, Scott Carlin, Kenny Eisenband. I met Eddie Lenahan, who I didn't know back in high school, but really nice guy. And there were others, I just can't remember their names. But those were the central runners. And it was fun talking to all of them, and they embraced me because they know my transgender situation, and they treated me as well as anybody else. They knew who I was, and they embraced me and accepted me, and I felt really good about that. Oh, and Barbara was there too, of course. And then I met some of my teammates who had their girlfriends with them, and also their wives. And it was wonderful. I had a great day. The weather was beautiful. I saw Coach, obviously. I met his wife and his two girls, and it was a wonderful time. The only thing was, when I got towards home, I had this horrible car accident, and my car got totaled, but I was able to walk away. And when I spoke to the police, the first one on site, who actually knew me because he was at my house quite a bit when I was going through a crisis and was taken to the hospital. So he screams out, "Emily, Emily, what happened?" And he says, because he knows my history, so he says, "Did you try to hurt yourself or something?" And I said, "No, officer, I had some trouble with the car. I couldn't stop it. It seemed like the car over-accelerated, and I couldn't stop it, so I had to avoid hitting the car in front of me, so I had to turn, and I didn't even know where I was going to wind up, but all I knew is I had to avoid that car in front of me, because I was going like 40 miles an hour, which is, I was within the speed limit, and then I lost total control of that car. I couldn't stop it. So I knew if I kept going straight, I would have hit the car in front of me at 40 miles an hour, and I would have got killed. The driver or passenger probably would have got killed, and the driver behind me most likely would have got killed too. I'm not being overly dramatic, but it would have been a catastrophe. It would have been a catastrophic accident. So I knew I had to avoid that car in front of me. So when I swerved, not knowing where the hell I was going to go, I hit the curb. This was surreal, what happened next. As I hit the curb, my car went slightly airborne. I was like in the air, and I saw there were trees. So as I'm in the air, just about ready to make contact with the trees, I was bracing to die, basically. I was thinking of my son and my family as I'm bracing to die. And when I hit the trees, it brought my car to a complete stop. My airbags deployed. My seatbelt kept me from going forward. So it was the combination of the seatbelt that kept me in my place and the airbags that kept me in my place. I was like squished almost. And I didn't have any physical injuries except my knees got a little bit banged up. But I was shaken up pretty bad. It was terrifying. It was my most terrifying experience I ever had. I couldn't even explain it to you for you to appreciate because you weren't in the car. I was in that car. And when I couldn't stop that accelerator, something happened. I don't know what happened to make it stick or whatever happened to it, or jam up or whatever. But when I knew I couldn't stop that car, I had to react so quickly that I knew I had to avoid the car in front of me. And I told the officer this is the only way I could have prevented a major accident. So I had to swerve out of that car's, otherwise I would have hit him and it would have been a catastrophe. And so in the police report he stated that I had a problem with the accelerator. And as I was speaking to my insurer, I said, look, something went wrong with that car. I had absolutely no control over it. I couldn't stop it. And he wrote it in the report. But I wasn't there long enough to go into details because there were people actually that stopped their cars to run to see what happened to me, to see if I was okay. And I had just grabbed my cell phone and I just got the hell out of that car. I had to literally force myself out because I was wedged in between my seatbelt and the airbag. So I had to find a way to unbuckle myself and squeeze through where the airbags deployed on the front and back. I was in the front, obviously. Luckily, my son wasn't with me. But I grabbed my cell phone and I forgot my CDs, but I was so shaken up, you know. And then I just got out of that car and I fell to my knees and I'm in a total state of shock. And then there are these people running to see what happened to me. And there were a group of women, like 4 or 5 of them, that was sitting with me. And they said, come, you know, move out of the direction of the car, just come this way. So they were all gathered around me, giving me support. And one of the women said, you want me to call a family relative? So I got my wife. I said, this is my wife's number and this is my son's number. You know, and they didn't even flinch when I said my wife because I look like a woman. But, you know, they were nice. They didn't, like, say anything. So they tried to reach my wife, but they only got voicemail. And then they tried to reach out to my son and the same thing. They only got voicemail. So they just said, you know, your family member was involved in a car accident and is going to be taken to the hospital. And they took me to the hospital. I didn't get to see what happened to the car. All I could see was that I looked from behind, the car looked fine. Looked to the side, it looked fine, but I didn't see what happened in the front because it was covered with the trees. So they took me to the hospital. They, I guess, completed their investigation in the police report. And then some of the police escorted me to the hospital in the ambulance while the other police stuck around at the accident scene. I guess they had somebody taking pictures. and I was taken to the hospital. They towed the car to the collision shop, and then the police officer, after I went through x-rays and all, and then I went, when I was still getting the x-rays, when I was in the regular part of the hospital before I went down to the psychiatric part, the officer came to visit me, the same officer that knows me, who said, Emily, what happened? And he said that your car's at the collision shop. This is the report that says a police report is going to be issued. And he gave me the address on where to go to pick up the police report. And he had the collision shop information. So when I was out of the hospital, I called the collision shop and I said, is my car totaled? And the woman on the phone said, hon, it's beyond totaled. So I didn't know what to think. But I asked her, can I come tomorrow? Because I need to empty the contents of my car. And before I went there, I had to have my claims agent at the insurance company to encourage me to get a rental car. And I said, yeah, but I was in this horrible car accident and I'm kind of shaken up. So I don't know if it's a good idea if I drive. And he said, listen, accidents happen. That's why there are insurance companies. And under your policy, you're entitled to get a rental. And he said that it works differently when you have a car at a total loss. So I only had a week to rent that car, and they would cover it. But I did take out additional insurance on the car because, God forbid something else happened. And I went to the collision shop, and when I saw the car, I was just in tears. And the woman knew who I was, the one I spoke to on the phone, and she just came out and hugged me as I was crying. And she said, hon, the car can be replaced, but you are very lucky that you were able to walk away and you're here still, because a person cannot be replaced, but a car can be. And I started to cry, and she hugged me. She gave me a big hug, and she said, it's gonna be okay, hon. It's gonna be okay. And then I asked her if she could take a picture of me by the car. The car was destroyed in the front, completely destroyed. And I couldn't help but cry. So she took pictures, she took 3 pictures. And then she got me a bag. And she said, empty all the contents into the bag. Whatever you want, you keep that bag. And the other bag you use to get rid of all the other things that you don't need. And then she said she had to run. So I never got to say goodbye to her. I did actually. I hugged her and I said, thank you for helping me. And she said, it's okay, hon. And she reassured me and said everything will be fine. And she was helpful to me. But it was difficult to see. And then I took pictures. I even did a video or 2 about that. And it was horrible to see what happened. And I looked at the damage. It had a cracked windshield. The whole car was bent inwards. It did damage to the whole engine parts of the car. And I was thinking, God, I'm lucky I'm still here, And I emptied all the contents, I put it in my car, the other bag with all the garbage, I gave it to one of the guys in the shop, and he asked me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll be okay." And he said, "Good luck." And he said, "I'm really sorry what happened, but you're alive, and that's the main thing, you know?" So they were all very nice to me and very encouraging, just like the insurance agent was. And then, like, the next day, I told the insurance agent that I picked up the contents, and I appreciate that you encouraged me to get a rental car. And he said, "No problem, this is part of your policy." And then before I knew it, he was now saying, "Well, now you need to get a car, so I would urge you to start looking for a car." And I said, "Yeah, but I just got into this accident." And he reinforced me again, and he said, "Listen, accidents happen, that's why I get paid. That's how I make a living, you know?" So he said I would suggest, because I said I really can't get around, and I really do need a car. So he said, "Go ahead and look for a car, you know?" And I went to Toyota. I told them what happened. I called Toyota also. And they're working out the arrangements with the insurance. You know, I'm just afraid how it's going to affect my premiums when it comes up for renewal. But I got a car. Well, this is the first time I leased a car, but I got a Toyota Corolla. And actually, I like it, kind of like it better than the Prius. I mean, I loved the Prius C. The problem was it was not, it was great it was fuel economy, economically, it was wonderful. I mean, I would get like between 48 miles to the gallon to like 55 miles to the gallon. Right? No. 40 or 50. Yeah, I think 50 miles per gallon, something like that. And yeah, so he encouraged me to get a car. And then I told him I got the car, and the dealer who was working with me, the salesman, made all the arrangements. You know, I gave him the license plates. He called the insurance company, and he said, "I'll return the plates. Don't worry about that. Your registration will come in the mail within a week, and we'll issue you new plates." And then he told me that he suggested I do a lease, because if I bought it would be much more expensive. So I was inclined to follow and do the lease. The only problem with a lease is you have to drive within a certain mileage, otherwise you get penalized. So that's one thing I have to be cognizant about, because I can't exceed that. So now the new car and my wife's car are on the policy, and I paid my first premium. And I haven't made my first payment on the car yet. Originally, the payment for the car was August 12th, and I asked them if they could put it to August 28th, because I don't get paid till the end of the month, basically. So I filled out this electronic email, signed it electronically, sent it off, and then they confirmed that now the payment date is August 28th. So come August 28th, I'll make my first lease payment. And the way I think leases work is these payments you make contribute to, if down the road you want to purchase the car, those payments will go towards the purchase. So whatever I don't know how they determine the cost of the car, whether they consider like the depreciation value of it after 3 years. I don't think it's like the full price that it was originally 3 years ago, if we're already 3 years now. So, but I didn't even ask that. But I asked, like, if, let's say I want to buy the car, he said, yeah, all the payments that you pay will go towards the payment of the car. So I like the car. The only thing I'm upset about is it doesn't have a CD player. It has, everything is like digital nowadays. So I was kind of surprised. I thought all cars come with CD players. You know, I didn't think you pay extra for a CD player. So I was disappointed. But the car is roomier. The only thing is my son is insistent that I get the Prius fixed because he doesn't know that it was, you know, a total loss. So he gets angry at me and he says, I want you to get the Prius fixed. And he even says, I don't care, I'll pay for it. And I said, but Matthew, it's a total loss. And he can't accept that. You know, I said, it's a loss. And he said, no, you have to have a positive attitude. It can be fixed. Anything can be fixed. But he doesn't understand. So I just can't really explain it to him. So when he says, you're getting it fixed, I just go along with him and I say, yeah, I don't know when I'm going to get it, but yeah, they're fixing it, knowing that that car is totaled beyond repair. So it was hard to get through that, especially because I had a great day before this happened. And, you know, life can be good. There's certainly a lot of things about life, how we interact with people, how we go about our daily lives and making friends and meeting people, you know, and watching our children grow. We only have one child, Matthew. Sadly, he struggles with autism, and it's very emotional, you know, because he's 20. Virtually, he has no direction. He's smart, but he psychologically and socially, he's like, I don't know how to say this the right way, but he's like a pre-teenager. But age-wise, he's 20. So, you know, I try to encourage him. I try to say, Matthew, would you like to try, maybe take a course at Nassau Community College, you know? You know, take something that you like. And he said, no, I can't go to college, you know? And I tried a couple of times, you know, trying to say, Matthew, this will be a good thing. You'll make friends, you'll learn, you'll discover like what you may want to do and study. And it's the same thing. He said, no. You know, and he goes through this whole thing, and it's like we go around in circles, so I don't even ask anymore. And obviously he's not mature enough to hold down a job. So he's in a dilemma, and I am too, and my wife, because we don't know what to do. He doesn't have any structure. We're having a big meeting Monday because I'm supposed to have surgery, and then I'm going to recover like for the next 2 to 3 months. So I really can't take Matthew anywhere. I can't go out. Like, well, last night we saw a wonderful movie. We saw Good Boys. It was hilarious. But unfortunately, Matthew had a meltdown too in the theater, and you know, luckily he came out of it. Some of the people in the seats were a little concerned, you know, and it could be embarrassing, you know. You know, people don't know what it's like to raise an autistic child, and now Matthew's an adult. So now we have all these other issues to have to deal with, like setting up a special needs trust for him, preparing him for possible residential group home living, uh, uh, working with Medicaid, his Medicaid advisors. But he's resistant to a group home. Anytime a group home comes up, he thinks we're abandoning him. So I can't even discuss it with him. And technically, if you want to arrange for your child to be placed in a group home, you have to go and look for the proper group home, make sure that the age range isn't too much of a gap. So obviously Matthew's 20, so if he's placed in a group home, we need to find one where they accommodate people between their early 20s to, I guess, the oldest maybe to, 25. That would be the ideal range, between 20 and 25, because Matthew's going to be 21 in December. And it's just difficult, because he doesn't want to be in a group home. He had a very bad experience when he went to a residential school upstate. 3 years we were separated, basically, other than for holidays. And it was an 8-hour trip by car. And he really didn't get a good education. He had a substandard education. He didn't take any Regents exams except for algebra. And he didn't really even score what traditionally is a passing score. Like, I believe if you get like a 70, that's passing. But they passed Maddie with a 55. If he was in a regular school, he would have failed. But there, they allow them no time limit. But that's not how the real world works, the real world, you have to stay within a time frame to finish something. And if you don't do it to the best of your ability and don't complete the task the way they want you to, they don't give you a 55 and say, that's fine, The real world is not like that. So he had a substandard education. He never took a foreign language. He only took algebra, no other math. He basically he had like some history learning. He never took biology or chemistry. Well, physics is more higher, but biology and chemistry, and if you want to include physics, which I took all those classes, but I can't compare myself to him. So he really didn't get a great education for 3 years. Levittown really disappointed him and us. And that was the reason why we moved here to begin with, because we thought Levittown was such a great school district. But we learned that that wasn't really the case for Matthew. And you would think that these schools would be able to accommodate autistic children. But Levittown failed miserably. And sometimes I feel like I failed miserably. But I was always at the meetings. I was always involved with his IEP. I tried to have a parent rep with us for the child, our son, but it was very expensive. So she came a few times, but I really couldn't afford to pay her because I was not working anymore. I was dependent on my disability income. And I couldn't elicit an attorney either. So I couldn't elicit a parent advocate or an attorney. So we were basically at the mercy of the school district. And when they decided that Matthew was not appropriate, they sent out packages for him to go to residential living schools. So we were kind of perplexed. We really didn't know what to make of it. And the only response they got back was for the school upstate, Hillside, which is 8 hours away, one way. And Matthew had a miserable experience up there. And no matter what we did, no matter how many times I got in touch with Levittown, they wouldn't help us. They just said Matthew's up at the right school. They wouldn't even listen to me because I would say, listen, my son isn't even learning a language. He's not taking science courses. He's not taking math courses. It's like he's being babied there. He's not learning anything. And they said that this is the most suitable school for him. And I got so angry a couple of times. I got so angry where I was screaming at the top of my lungs, where they physically had to restrain me and call the cops. That's how angry I was. And they had to take me to the hospital for a psych evaluation, when all I was trying to do was step up for my son. But I get very emotional. And when I get very emotional, sometimes I lose it. And I lost it. I was not abusive. I was not going to do anything physically. But I was screaming at the top of my lungs, saying, you're not listening. You're not listening to me. My son is not learning anything up there. And you refuse to have him put into a closer residential place that we can visit him regularly instead of just seeing him on holidays. And I got so irate, so angry. And then they just call the cops. And then the cops lead me off and take me to the hospital. And I am so fed up, Now my son is 20 years old. He's got no direction. He doesn't know what he wants to do. And he's probably going to be a ward of the state. He's going to be wound up in a group home for the rest of his life. And I can't deal with this emotionally. I just can't deal with it because I can't afford to live here anymore. And if I can't afford to live here, because the real estate taxes are astronomical, and I'm not even getting benefit for the full real estate tax and state tax deductions because our president, who lied and said this is a tax break for the middle class, which is a bunch of bullshit, says that this is going to help the middle class. Yeah, help me. I'm part of that. Maybe not even middle class. Maybe lower middle class. I don't even make a lot of money combined. And I never paid more taxes in my life. The reason? I lost $8,000 with the real estate tax and tax deduction. $8,000 I lost on my Schedule A because I could only take 10. I couldn't take the full amount that I paid for real estate tax and what my wife had taken out of her pay for state. So I lost roughly $8,000 there. And then they take away our personal exemptions, roughly $4,000 per individual. So I lost $16,000 there. So basically, under Obama, I would have that total of $24,000 deducted from my taxable income, which would reduce my tax liability. And in most cases, we were overpaid, so we would get a refund, a pretty good refund. Not fantastic, but a refund that we would look forward to receiving, federal and state. But not this year. The tax break that Trump and Republicans said would help the middle class. Like I said, I lost $24,000 that had to be added to my taxable income. So basically, I had to pay additional tax on $24,000 that I didn't have to pay the year before. Because the year before, when Trump was in office, the tax laws had not changed until this year. So we were on the Obama side with taxes the previous year. But on this year with Trump, when I say I'm talking about 2018, I actually had to pay. I never had to pay in a long, long time. So a tax plan that would benefit the middle class, you tell me how I benefited when I lost $8,000 in real estate and state tax deduction, and I'm paying a fortune for real estate tax, and I lost $16,000 for personal exemptions. And he says we're going to double your standard deduction, but he doesn't say we're going to take away your personal exemptions, and we're not going to give you the full benefit of your real estate and tax deductions. They didn't mention that. That was a secret. So they made people believe that they were going to get a tax break because their standard deduction would be doubled. But he left out the most important part of that. Okay, they double the standard deduction. Great. Awesome. But they take it away because they eliminate the personal exemptions and they eliminate the full benefit of what you pay for real estate tax and state tax. So you tell me how this is going to benefit the middle class. Because even though they doubled the standard deduction, I itemize. So I lost a lot of itemized deduction. So that doubling of the standard deduction had no effect on my tax. But what had an effect on my tax was the fact that I lost $8,000 in real estate and state tax. And on top of that, I lost roughly $16,000 in personal exemptions. So they're lying when they say we double the standard, so that's going to help immensely. Do they say, though, we're going to also take away personal exemptions and we're going to limit your real estate and state tax deduction? No. They just pretend that doesn't exist. And they say we're doubling, so people who don't think, who are just like La La Land or brainwashed by this moron, think it's great. And then I have no idea how they felt, but I knew that I was going to be in trouble this year. Because I am a CPA, even though I'm not practicing because of my disability. I knew this was going to be a disaster. But it's out of my control. What can I do? This is the way it is right now. And it really gets me angry. I got so angry that I called Peter King's office. I called Peter King's office in Long Island and in Washington, D.C. I called Chuck Schumer's office. And I even called the White House. And the White House sucks. They said, we can't take your name. We'll pass it along to someone. They listened to my complaints. And this woman is so stupid who I talked to. I said to her that I lost my personal exemptions, $16,000 worth. And I lost my real estate and state tax. It was limited. So I lost $8,000. And I don't know what this woman is thinking. And they're all volunteers anyway. They're not getting compensated to answer these questions. So she says, well, the $8,000 doesn't, you're not paying $8,000 in additional taxes. And I said to her, yeah, I know that. But but I am losing it as a deduction from my taxable income. This should have been reported on Schedule A, the full amount of my real estate tax and state tax. And she kept saying, yeah, but your tax did not go up by $8,000. I said, I don't care if it did or not. I'm trying to tell you, I lost $8,000 in my state and real estate tax deduction. And in Long Island, I am paying a fortune for real estate tax. And now, because of Trump, I can't even get the full benefit of the deduction. And then I said to her, I lost $16,000 worth of personal exemptions. And this lady got me so angry. She says to me, but Trump doubled the standard deduction. And I was ready to freaking scream at her. And I said, it doesn't matter that he doubled it. It doesn't matter because it doesn't apply to me. And even if he doubled it, he's taking away the personal exemptions. So there is no benefit. And the fact that I also lost $8,000 on my standard deduction, on my itemized deductions. So she says, okay, I'll write this down and I'll pass it along. I can't guarantee. And I said, how am I going to get this written? How can I communicate to someone higher in power? And she said, well, write a letter to the president. And I laughed at her and I said, are you serious? You think I'm going to write a letter and he's even going to read it? And do you think he's really going to care? I said, he doesn't give a shit about us. All he cares about is his base, 40% of America who, I don't know what's going on with them and why they love this guy. And he is not going to even give a shit. He's not going to read it. So it's a waste of time. And I got so angry I just hung up the phone. And I spoke to Chuck Schumer's office and I spoke to a woman who was nice and I told her everything. I told her we're struggling. I told her that I can't even get the full benefit of my real estate and state tax. I told her that I lost $8,000 because of that on my Schedule A. I told her I lost $16,000 additionally with the elimination of the personal exemptions. And she wrote all that I said. And I also said to her that I said I'm transgender and I'm extremely upset that Trump eliminated transgender soldiers from serving in the military and said if you want to serve in the military, then you have to serve as the sex that you were born. Otherwise you can no longer serve. So I said, I'm transgender. I don't have military experience, but I said that I am so irate that he would do such a thing. He was a coward who never served in the military at all. He got deferments, and now he's going to get rid of transgender soldiers just because they're transgender. And he thinks they're not equipped for battle when they serve their country with honor, pride, and dedication. And now he's going to kick them out as if they're garbage. And then I told her, suppose I want to sell my house because I can't afford the real estate taxes. Now, this lady was nice to me. But I said, suppose I want to sell my house because I can't afford to live here anymore. And I have an autistic son who's probably going to be in a group home in some time in the near future. So it doesn't pay for me to stay here if I can't afford to live here. And I say to her, who will buy my house when the house needs a lot of work? And my real estate taxes currently are roughly $16,000. My wife's state taxes was $2,000. So it's $18,000 that we paid in real estate and state combined. $18,000, and we only get a deduction for $10,000. Now you tell me how I'm going to sell my house that needs work, and that's not even, and real estate taxes are going up each year, and on the tax return you can't even take the full deduction. So I said, if I bought a house now where I was the buyer and the seller was trying to sell, and I realized that the taxes here are way high and I wasn't going to get the full benefit of that, why would I want to buy the house? That's insanity. And the people that I'm going to try to sell the house to, you think they're going to say, oh, I don't care that we don't get the full deduction. It doesn't matter. And I don't care that I have to put tons of money in to fix the house. You know? You think someone's going to say that? No way. They're going to say, well, thank you for showing us the house. And they're going to walk away and they're never going to call back. Because they know, first of all, they have to invest so much money in this house. Because it needs so much fixing that I can't afford to do. And they're going to get ripped off by the president because they can't take the full deduction of their real estate tax and state tax. So what that means is that if I can't afford to pay for the house and I can't sell the house, then we're going to go into foreclosure. I'm going to lose the house. I'm going to lose the investment that I put in the house and all the payments that I made for the past 15 years. And the mortgage company is going to take the house, and we're going to wind up homeless. You know? And this is America now, under this president. This is the way I have to live my life now. Worrying about losing my house. Not being able to sell my house because of these supposed tax changes that are going to benefit the middle class. Yeah, tell me how it's going to benefit when you're taking away so much. Your tax breaks are for the rich, and taking corporations and saying you no longer have to pay at the higher tax level. We're going to give you 11% benefit. So your tax rate's going to go down by 11%. Yet my taxes went up. So I guess I'm the sucker that has to pay for the benefits bestowed on the rich and corporations. I'm the sucker. And I'm the one that doesn't even get paid much. And on top of that, my Social Security monies get taxed additionally. And I had to liquidate my last IRA because my insurance premiums for my car went up. And if it goes up again, like the last time, I won't be able to afford to pay the mortgage on a regular basis. And if I rush to try to sell the house, I'm lucky if I get $200 to $250 when I bought it for $320. And nobody's going to be interested anyway because they don't even get the full benefit of the real estate tax and state tax deduction. So you tell me how that's going to work. I hate this guy so much. I really can't stand him. He is not in right mind. He's not psychologically fit to serve as president. Plus, he has absolutely 0% compassion. Zero. Negative compassion. He separates people who are trying to come into this country for a better life, refugees. Separates the parents from the children, babies even. And what does he do? He deports the parents and he locks up these babies in little cages as if they were dogs or animals or cats. I don't understand how people could support this guy and how the Republican Party can be so spineless, so gutless to let it happen. I used to be proud of America. I used to love America. I used to be happy that I was an American citizen. Not anymore. This is not the America I envisioned. This is a nightmare. And if we have to deal with him again for the next 4 more years, I am not going to stay here. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do, but damn, I'm not going to deal with that. I hate him so much. I can't stand him. And I can't believe that our country would vote him in again with all this nonsense. He doesn't even care about climate change. He thinks it's a hoax. He doesn't care that the environment is being poisoned. You know, he doesn't care that transgender soldiers are dedicated soldiers who put their lives on the line. He doesn't care because he's transphobic, just like his vice president, Mr. Pence, who's even a nightmare himself. He tariffs China, thinking that that's going to hurt China. He gets out of the TPP plan, so now China has a stronghold of it. And China is not going to sit down and be quiet. They're going to impose tariffs too. And then you have this tariff war with this moron who thinks he's going to win. He's got this crazy mentality that he has to win. But he doesn't realize he's hurting farmers. He doesn't realize he's hurting people who are shoppers and buyers of things made in China, where we have to pay more now. He doesn't realize that the middle class are paying more taxes than they ever did. He doesn't know how to conduct himself properly. He pushes world leaders out of the way so he can be in front, seeing everything. He does not belong in the White House. And I can't figure out for the life of me why there are people that support him. And I never had heard of, where a president only cares about the people who voted him into office and completely ignores the rest of America who didn't support him. For the life of me, I can't understand how a president can just show loyalty to the 40% who voted him in and completely ignore everyone else, essentially ignoring their needs. And then he wants to take away health insurance for the people who need it. He wants to take away food stamps for people who are really up against it, and single mothers with children that they need to feed. So he'd rather cut corporate taxes by roughly 10-11%. He'd rather take away the AMT for the rich so they don't have to pay extra tax, while he eliminates food stamps for people who really need it. He eliminates free school lunches for the people who need it. He wants to eliminate, by billions of dollars, funding for Medicare, Social Security, disability, and retirement, Medicaid. And he wants to now go back Two, if you have a pre-existing condition that you can no longer be covered, they will not cover it. That's what he wants. Plus, a pregnant woman who gives birth to a child, according to him and the Republicans, that's a pre-existing condition. So now the parents of a new baby have to foot the bill because that's a pre-existing condition, and insurance companies no longer have to cover that. It is ridiculous. And he said repeal and replace. Repeal and replace. And he wanted to repeal Obamacare, but never had a plan to replace it. I mean, where does that make sense? I'm baffled, completely baffled. I mean, I can't live in this country now. I can't live in Long Island. I can't afford it, He wants to isolate our country. He wants to piss off all of our allies. He wants to make this all a financial transaction by walking away from NATO if all the other countries don't pay their fair share. And how does he determine what they should pay? NATO was always in, that's what kept the countries together, After World War II, they formed an alliance, right? And then all President Trump cares about is Russia's involvement. And he doesn't want to deal with the Paris Accords with climate change, so he just walks away from it. When Obama thought it was a very important part of our existence, he, under all the regulations that were formed to prevent illnesses, cancer, by transmissions of poison into the air, he got rid of those restrictions. He doesn't care how much poisons go in the air or how much our water supply is being poisoned. He doesn't care. Why would we want a president like that? Why would 40% of the population want a president like that? That doesn't make sense to me. And this is contributing to my depression too. I have an autistic son who most likely will need to go into a group home. If they reduce Medicaid by billions of dollars, and they reduce Social Security disability by billions of dollars, and Medicaid by billions of dollars, you tell me how he's going to be able to go into a group home. And you tell me how those group homes are going to be able to survive. Because he'd rather cut the programs that help the most neediest of people, or the people who worked for 30 years like myself, who paid into the system and deserves my share of what I'm entitled to. Now he's telling us that he wants to cut that because he put our country into a trillions of dollar deficit. And he thinks it's okay, and that he can eliminate food stamps, and he can cut the Social Security, the retirement, the disability, the Medicare, the Medicaid. He can reduce that by billions of dollars while he gives corporations 10% tax breaks. And he gives the rich the opportunity to get more or pay less in tax because the AMT is written off. And he takes away our personal exemptions and limits our real estate tax deductions. You tell me how that's benefiting my family. when I have to pay more tax than I ever did. And people still fall for his lies. I never experienced a president that every word out of his mouth is a lie. Never, ever. But he lies every day. And there's like a soap opera every day about this guy. And he had the audacity to say that if Hillary was elected president, she would bring so much baggage to the White House and wouldn't be an effective president. And he had the audacity to call out Obama because he was playing golf one day. And he says, I'm never going to play golf because I'll be too busy working in the White House, representing the people. Are you kidding me? He's played more golf than Obama did in his 8 years serving as president. And he's 2 years into his presidency. He flies airplanes back and forth to all of his properties and down to Florida where he plays most of his golf at taxpayers' expense. Obama never did that. And people still support this guy when he's hurting a lot of us. And with the farmers who are suffering and could lose their farms and maybe their homes as well. It doesn't make sense. And he defends white supremacists. And he calls out people who are fighting against them for good reason. And a poor woman, Heather Heyer, who gets killed because of a lunatic individual, deranged white supremacist, who's guided by the one in charge of the White House, who encourages violence, who encourages disunity, who loves to only benefit 40% of the Americans who support him, and he doesn't give a shit about the rest of us. And he's our president. I don't get it. I know I started this topic about depression, but I'm telling you, I've never been so depressed since this guy became president. I've never started having I never had this much anxiety. He's affecting me terribly, mentally and emotionally, and I can't stand him tweeting every day, defending himself. And he says it like this: President Trump is doing great for America. President Trump will not let you down. President Trump is a big supporter for the LGBT community. He always refers to him as President Trump. He never says, I am a supporter of whatever. And yeah, he says he's a big promoter of the LGBT community. Yet, he bans transgender soldiers from serving in the military. The ones who are in the military, if they want to stay, they have to detransition. So if a transgender woman is in the military and she wants to stay in the military, now she has to become a man again. That's how he supports the LGBT community. And then in schools, he says if you're a transgender girl, you were born a boy, so you have to use the boys' bathroom. And he doesn't even care if she's wearing a dress. He doesn't care if she's bullied or beaten up by the boys. And that's someone who supports LGBT community. And on top of that, he demands that all embassies don't respect LGBT month, Pride Month. He says all embassies will not raise the LGBT flag. Now, how is that someone who supports the LGBT community? Huh? I have no words. You know? That's one of the reasons why I'm so depressed and have such anxiety. And I'm so afraid of the future. I've never been like this. To a degree, yes. But when Obama was in the White House, I never had sleepless nights. I never had to worry that I was going to lose my Social Security or my Medicare or my son's Medicaid. I never had those concerns. But since this guy's in office, and also when Obama was in office, I didn't have to worry about my taxes going up. Because he wasn't going to eliminate or limit the real estate and state taxes to $10,000, you know? But if he did, and the Republicans, the way they are with Trump, if Obama did one of the many infractions that this president done, they'd be on his case to get rid of him. They're such hypocrites. They stand behind a man who condemns races of people, a white supremacist who separates little kids from their parents, who makes the middle class pay more taxes than they ever did, disguising his tax plan as a tax plan to benefit the middle class, who literally condemns everybody who doesn't support him, who makes fun of his opponents, who criticizes them and labels them and treats them with such disrespect, who condemns a senator, John McCain, who is a war hero, and says that he doesn't consider someone who's a prisoner of war a war hero. He said that's not a war hero if he's captured. What did he do, Trump? He didn't serve in the military. He doesn't know what John McCain, the late Senator John McCain did. Senator John McCain served his country with pride, and he was a man of integrity and morals. Trump has no morals. All he cares about is him. That's it. The world revolves around him. Whereas other presidents knew they served the country for the benefit of the people. Trump serves the country for the benefit of himself. And why is he not presenting his tax returns? Huh? Why? Does he have something to hide? And why is he such a big supporter of Russia, a country that is a dictatorship? Why does he admire so many dictators? Is it because he wants to be a dictator too? He wants to kill democracy? He wants to make our country into his country? And he wants to build a wall in Mexico, and he says in his rallies when he was running for president, and who's going to pay for it? As the audience says, Mexico. Who's going to pay for it? Mexico. Mexico doesn't pay for that, and they shouldn't. And Trump is going to make us pay for it while he increases our taxes, while he gallivants all around the world at taxpayers' expense, that he goes to all of his country clubs to play golf, and we have to pay for that. Yeah, that's benefiting us. That's making America great again. How is that possible? How? You tell me. Because I'm kind of puzzled about it. Do you have an answer for that? Who out there supports Trump? You think that's okay? You think it's okay that he can take health insurance away from millions of people who rely on it? Because it was Obama who developed the health care? And now he's got this thing called Trump Care that isn't even anything. Trump Care is where if you have pre-existing conditions, insurance companies don't have to cover it. That's Trump Care. Trump Care is also a health insurance plan that doesn't benefit the people who really need it and are struggling. Trump Care doesn't even know what it's about. The one who developed Trump Care doesn't even know what it's about because it doesn't really exist. He's hurting patients, he's hurting doctors, he's hurting hospitals. But does he care? Of course not. So I can't figure out why 40% of America supports this guy. I really can't figure it out. And to want him to serve another 4 years with his nonsense? Give me a break. And I know that people are going to criticize this video, so I'm going to disable comments. Not because I'm afraid to face the reality of what people think and say of what I just said. Or maybe I won't disable the comments. Because I think what I have to say should be heard. And people should express what I'm saying. So I won't disable comments. But if someone wants to criticize me for my beliefs, then I simply will block them and report them. As I do with anybody who's transphobic and insults people like myself. I will report you if you criticize me. I'm entitled to say what I have to say. Because I'm affected. My son is affected. So if you think he's such a great president, yet he's hurting families like mine and that's okay, then you think what you think. But you'll see that if you love this guy so much, you wait for the next 4 years he's here. If the country's like this now, can you imagine what it's going to be like 6 years from now? It will be the biggest nightmare that I would ever have. But we don't have a Democrat, seemingly, who is capable of beating this moron. We don't have that go-to candidate. And I blame the Democrats because they don't know how to deal with this guy. They don't. And they don't call him on these things that he's doing controversially. They just let it happen. They failed miserably when he put a ban on Muslims coming into this country who are hardworking, good people. Not every Muslim is a terrorist. It's a small percentage. And he thinks that Mexicans are nothing but murderers and thieves. And then they bring children in as a disguise. Not even thinking that it's a family just trying to make a better life for themselves. He's convincing America, or the America that supports him, that these people are just using children as human shields, while their families just trying to make a better life for themselves. You think that's a president worthy of re-election? Do you think that we are far better off than we were before this administration? Do you think that there are a lot of people covering up for him and willing to lie? Very sad that people still support him. And I can't understand why. I've had enough of him. And I'm transgender, you know? And I have depression. And I have a son who's autistic. And we're disabled, both of us. Yet he can make fun of disabled people. He can mock disabled people. He can threaten to take away Social Security disability. And he's a representative of the United States of America. Is he the best that we could have as president? And if he is the best, how is that decided? When he's tearing up this country, when he's making it impossible for us to have a good standing now because of him. He thinks this country revolves solely around him. And his ego is so fragile. And he says fake news just about every day. News that's legitimate, that reports the truth. And he's convinced his supporters that anything that comes from reliable news sources is fake news because it's critical of Trump. As if Trump can't make a mistake, or Trump doesn't lie, or Trump doesn't do controversial policies. And they believe him when he's the fake, when he's the liar, when he's the one who's misguiding people. But he brainwashed them to the point where they think that the mainstream news, the legitimate news, is the source of fake news. I can't understand how people can be so gullible. I knew right from the start he was going to be a disaster for our country. I wanted no part of him. I didn't think that our country would ever be like this. I never envisioned an America with such hate, such division, such polar oppositeness. A country filled with white supremacists. I never in a million years would have thought that our country would become like this. Or at least in my lifetime and my son's. That's going to affect us for decades because he's appointing to the Supreme Court people that will stick by Trump. And when Trump's out of office, the Supreme Court is going to be still guided by Trumpism. And we'll never really have fair decisions. And that's why Ruth Bader Ginsburg, despite her illnesses, despite her age, is trying her best to stay in her role in the Supreme Court no matter how many times she's fought off cancer, because she knows that when her seat is vacant, that Trump is going to appoint another supporter of his ideas. And that will be the undoing of America. Every Supreme Court decision will be questionable now because we have biased representatives in the Supreme Court. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, despite her many illnesses, is trying to stay strong enough to continue her service to this great, well, what used to be this great country. But since Trump's been in charge, it isn't the greatest country. And if you want to come to this country, I suggest you think again. And I would probably encourage you to go to Canada or to any other country that has a legitimate democracy, because this is not working out. And we're suffering because of it. And you wonder why I'm depressed. I am very much emotionally connected to this nonsense because I worry every day, not just for me, but for my son. You know, because eventually he's going to have to go to a group home. And if his Medicaid is slashed and his Social Security disability is slashed, then where is he going to wind up? Is he going to wind up in the streets too? Am I going to wind up in the streets because I can't sell my house? Because my real estate taxes keep increasing, but I can only take $10,000 as a deduction when my real estate taxes are roughly 16, and my wife's state taxes another 2, so that's 18. So I'm losing 8,000, and every year my real estate taxes keep going up, but I'm not getting the benefit of those increases. So what else can I do? I have to try to sell. And just like I said before, who's going to buy a house where they can't even get a full deduction of the real estate tax and state tax? Because Long Island happens to be one of the highest price of real estate tax. And that's why I'm depressed. Because I am not able to handle this stress. I have lots of stress, lots of it. And I'm also transgender. I've been discriminated against many, many times. I am tired of this. I can't take this anymore, you know. It's affecting me terribly. I've never been affected by a presidential administration. This is the first time that I've been sick over who's in the White House. I was very young when Richard Nixon was a controversial president, so I didn't really know much about him serving our country. And unfortunately, I didn't know much about JFK when he served. But JFK was a president of integrity and morals, and there were rumors that he was involved with Marilyn Monroe. But he served his country, you know. And he had a crisis with Cuba, and there was a whole, big to-do with all that. Ronald Reagan was a Republican. I don't have much of a amount of criticisms. I thought Reagan was a good president, even though there were some controversial decisions. And there was Iran-Contra, which I'm not really completely knowledgeable about. But of all the presidents, and I was upset with President Bush, the father and then the son, but I didn't lose sleep over their administrations. But this administration, I'm like going out of my mind. It's affecting me so much. And it's contributing to my depression. It's contributing to my worries about the financial situation I'm in. It's worrying me because I'm transgender, and they said that even if I applied to a company, that if the company had a religious belief that they should not have transgender people in their employ for religious reasons, then it's okay to discriminate against them. Why would I want to support someone like that? Who makes me pay much higher taxes? Who takes away my personal exemptions? Who takes away my real estate full deduction and state? Why would I support someone like that? And that's why I don't understand why there are people that that want him to be back in office in 2020 or 2021. I don't get it. I wanted this video to be more centered around depression and autism and suicide, which I'm all affected by. But this video took a different turn once I started talking about Trump. But I am very much affected, which does contribute to my depression. And I don't like him because he's hurting people like me, my family, and lots of other families that are like in my situation. And when I get to get to understand what's going on in this country, seeing babies separated from their parents, put into cages as if they're animals, who are separated and traumatized, as well as the parents, and then the parents are deported out, and then they have raids of people who are hardworking people, just because they don't, they can't provide that they're citizens. They're illegal, but they're not doing anything wrong. They're working hard, supporting their families. And then also, he wants to eliminate birthright citizenship, because if a family from another country comes in and the wife gives birth to a baby, that baby now, according to Trump, doesn't have the right now to be considered an American citizen. He wants to eliminate birthright citizenships. Immigration attorneys are going to have a field day with all of what his proposals are. And I hope that he loses in a landslide in 2020. I hope to God that there's a Democratic presidential candidate who can beat this guy and embarrass him where they win in a landslide and Trump loses big time. I wish that could happen. I'm going to do another video that centers strictly around depression, around being transgender, around dealing with children on the autistic spectrum, because I have a son on the autistic spectrum. I lost my mom to depression. I lost my dad to suicide. I, at times, tried to commit suicide. So I will devote my videos, or my next video, to those issues. And I'm sorry that I went off on this, because I felt I had to once I started discussing this. So, but I will. And I hope I am able to do surgery on Wednesday, September 11th. Not a good day for America, September 11th. And I will do a video about September 11th as well. I got some ideas, because I've done a few in the past, but I've got some ideas, because it affected me terribly too. So, I guess this is time to go, because my battery's like at 2%. So, this is Emily, Ainelli. I'm transgender. I struggle with depression. I have bipolar disorder. I have tried in the past to commit suicide. I have a son who's autistic, most likely having to go into a group home. And most likely I'm going to lose my house because of the unfair tax program. My real estate taxes keep increasing, but we don't get the full deduction. And how am I going to sell my house and convince someone to buy with knowing that the house needs a lot of work, and now that they can't even get full benefit of the real estate taxes they pay? And Long Island happens to be one of the highest taxed communities in the country. So you tell me, how am I going to convince someone to buy my house when I'm probably going to get stuck with it? And the minute I can't make those mortgage payments is when I'm going to lose the house and most likely wind up in the streets. And that's my biggest fear. Because if I wind up in the streets, my family will, and I have an autistic son, and my wife is working and contributing to society, and she's trying to do her best. And I contributed for 30 years, and I tried to do my best. And now we have to live under these conditions. It's just not right. It's not right. Well, I have to go. I can't talk about this anymore.